One particular topic that's hardly ever discussed in the realm of readiness, survival, and prepping is the fact that there are those among us who are above the age of 50. Now, as of this recording, I'm already 57 years old, and I'm not what I used to be in terms of my physical abilities and stuff like that. As you grow older, reality begins to set in. You can't run that fast, you're not that agile anymore. And there are stuff that somehow what was once easy for you isn't so. Let's just say that things change once you're over the hill, or once you're past the half century mark. Things begin to change, which is why every so often I think about how ready am I if in case shit happens and I needed to move, I needed to do stuff. In other words, how would I manage an SHTF scenario at my age and still have the ability to, in other words, how do I get by an SHTF scenario at my age? And for those of you who are just about my age and who are way past the half century mark, so one of the realities of being past 50 is that there's a limit to what you can do. I can't run anymore. I can't run that fast. I can't climb that fast. Stairs become quite challenging, and therefore I was thinking in terms of a bug out scenario where I needed to haul some stuff from here to where I was going. And as of right now, the main plan is for me to bring myself and whatever equipment I can manage approximately 50 kilometers from where I'm standing or from where I sit right now. That's the general plan. But again, getting from point A to point B is somewhat of a challenge. So I've been spending a lot of time considering what I can what I can hump with me and what needs to be left behind. Now, whether we'd like to admit it to ourselves, there are stuff that definitely will be left behind in case of a bug out scenario. Now, from a personal standpoint, the only reason why I'm bugging out is because I live alone and my children are approximately 50 kilometers away from me, and they will be my first priority in case anything bad should happen. So, first thing to consider is that if I do decide to bug out, then I say goodbye to my current location and the possibility of ever coming back, which means that there's a lot of the equipment which I have been heavily invested in will now become the property of someone else. And that's generally the ugly truth behind it. If you've invested heavily in a lot of equipment and then suddenly feel the need to bug out, definitely you're going to leave a lot of stuff behind. So then this is where the maturity of a 50-year-old will come into play. Although physically there's very little else that we can do, it's this thing that is the most valuable asset that we have: maturity and the wisdom that we've acquired over the years, which should help get us through in very difficult situations, such as a shit show, if that were to happen. Now, in my previous video, I was talking about how to carry smart or how to carry stuff strategically. And they should carry over into whatever bug out plans that you have, simply because, as someone who's middle aged and physically challenged, you can no longer subscribe. Now, personally, I do not subscribe to the two is one concept, simply because, in case that I had to trim everything down, then there will be this nagging feeling that I only have one knife, one way to start a fire, etc., etc. So, the two is one concept really is something of a fantasy more than a practical solution to whatever problems you have to face. So, how do I practice the one is one concept. Well, you've already seen this particular EDC pouch, and in this pouch, it has all the necessary components that I believe will help me get through the day, especially when I'm working. Separate from the pouch is a pair of miniature drama shares, and this is something that I need for work. Now, inside that pouch, a big lighter, a small pen, my half micra, which you've already seen before, a combination strap cutter and oxygen tank wrench, plus glass breaker, and my lumen top tool AAA flashlight. So basically, that combination in itself should be enough to help me get by in a day. Now, when I'm not working or when I'm casually moving around the city, I have a basic combo of just the Victorinox waiter and my Jet Beam Mini One flashlight. Apart from the usual, the phone, the watch, the pen, and everything else. Now, as you can see, that's all I carry with me simply because if you've ever been a commuter all your life, then you're always worried about weight. You're always worried about the extra stuff that you carry, which turns out to be excess baggage in the long run, which is why I've learned to trim down my stuff to what I absolutely need in a given day. And for me, doesn't matter whether I'm in an urban or let's say an outdoor environment, I need some way to start a fire and some way to cut something, which is basically covered by both the micra and the big lighter. So generally speaking, I'm already covered with the two basic survival necessities, whether it be for the outdoors or in an urban environment. And in fact, I went hiking with just the Micra and the Jet Beam Mini One while I was in the US last summer. So I found that during that particular trip, I did manage with only the bare minimum. And at no point during my stay in the US did I feel inadequate in the sense that I wish I had my Victorinox waiter or wishing I had a larger, much more capable fixed blade knife. And no, I didn't exactly feel that. Somehow I did have fun, even without an elaborate ETC setup. And like I said, part of the advantage of being over 50 is the wisdom that I've accumulated over the years, which helps me decide better what to have on me on a daily basis or which tools I should have on me in a survival situation. Because let's face it, people say the rationale behind the two is one concept is if in case you lose something. Now, personally, one way to get around losing stuff is to actually have just one of each tool. For example, when I carry or if I carry my Victorinox waiter, then I will have to leave behind the Leatherman Micra. It's one or the other. It's as simple as that. And for someone who moves around the city, getting in and out of places where blades and other pointy stuff are generally prohibited, there has to be some practicality in what you carry. And still maintain that you have a cutting tool, you have a way to start a fire, you have a torch on you. And that's basically the general concept of everyday carry or an ECS, an everyday carry system. These are tools that help you get by with everyday tasks or extraordinary tasks within the day that will need special tools. This particular tool takes the place of the nail clippers, a knife, a screwdriver, a bottle opener, and a few more capabilities, I should say. So now you should ask, what's the advantage of the one is one concept? Well, I found over the years, over the last few decades, that since I carry just one of each tool, is that I've learned to take care of it more. I've learned to value the knife that I had on me, the flashlight that I had on me. These things become 100 times more important than they actually are if I practice the two is one concept, which means I cannot afford to lose my knife. I cannot afford to lose my flashlight or any other tool that I have on me on an everyday basis. And that's wisdom. That's the wisdom of the one is one concept. If you practice the two is one concept, one disadvantage is you'll end up with so much stuff on you that if you had to be in a bug out or in a long hike, you'll probably end up dumping some of your stuff. And if in the rare chance that I actually lose a tool in the middle of a survival scenario, then shit happens. That's the ugly truth. The point is, I only have one knife, I only have one tool. Then this tool is 100 or 1,000 times more important than it would be if I had several redundancies. So that's the main advantage of the one is one concept. As I said, you'll end up with a more lean and mean package on you. So you'll have only the stuff that's important. You'll have, at the very least, one of each item: one knife, one light, one way to start the fire. Now, people somehow lose sight of the fact that a survival scenario is just that. It's being able to overcome your current circumstances with what you have on you, which most of the time is not much, which is why I don't believe in elaborate survival kits or stuff like that. For me, the absolute minimum survival kit would be a good Swiss Army knife, a good multi-tool, and that's about it. If there's one single item that I should have on me that will help me survive, should be a good Swiss Army knife or a good knife in general. People are so wrapped around two is one that they end up acquiring stuff, too much kit that they don't need. And in case of a bug out scenario, there's hardly any way for them to take their stuff with them. And if in case you're actually thinking of a bug out scenario, then you will have to literally think on your feet, which means that in a bug out scenario, there might not be decent roads. There's going to be all sorts of obstacles on the road. So if you think that your bug out kit can be stashed in a car or carried in a four-wheel drive, then you gotta be smoking some shit. If you're seriously thinking of a bug out scenario, then it will have to be a bug out on foot. And that's how I see things. I have to have stuff that are lightweight, which I can carry on my back with my nearly 60-year-old body and carry it at the very least 50 kilometers on very rough terrain or probably very rough conditions in shit hits the fan scenario. So those are the realities that I think about on a daily basis. It's not because I don't have enough equipment to do a two is one thing. I have already, as it is, I have so much stuff that I can put 5 or 6 blades in a single pack, but that's not being practical anymore. The way I think about things is that I need to have just one fixed blade knife and probably one Swiss Army knife. And the only redundancies that I see that are practical are with the fire starting concept. And I have several ways to start a fire. But then again, at least I have one lighter and an alternate way to start a fire, which means I don't have two lighters, I don't have two ferro rods, I don't have two Swiss Army knives, and you get the drift. That's how I see things. That's how I'm packing my current survival kit. And this is the new concept I'm working on. It's a small survival kit. In a later video, we'll talk about what's inside this actual kit. But as you can see, it's really small and it fits into whatever pack that I would choose to carry. Because in reality, the most I can do in a genuine bug out scenario is go on foot and hike that 50 kilometers in whatever conditions, probably rough, most likely hostile. It will not be a perfect hike. So the other reality is if I decide to leave my current location, then there's a very small chance of me ever coming back. Or if I come back, or will it still be a friendly environment for me? So those are the things that you have to consider whenever you're building a survival kit, especially if you're just like me, over the age of 50. So these are the things that you think about. You let your wisdom take the better part of you. It's not because you have the money to buy stuff. It's not that at all. It's not about building the biggest, largest, most complete survival kit. I mean, people are losing sight of the fact that something as small as a Swiss Army knife was the original survival kit, because in a survival situation, you will have to improvise stuff. You will have to find a way to cook your food, find a way to purify your water, find a way to process wood, and stuff like that. And all you really needed is a single piece of equipment that could get you or could help you improvise those things and eventually gather up more stuff like trash bags or other items that you might need, simply because a survival scenario is not one where you have to be comfortable. The situation itself is not comfortable, which is why I don't understand why people are looking for comfort items in building their survival kits. And while it's nice to be comfortable in a survival scenario, that's not exactly what survival is all about. It's basically getting by with what little that you have to get to the next level or the next 10 miles, 10 kilometers, or whatever. That's what true survival is all about. It's more of a game of the mind, not necessarily of the body, of course. You know, at my age, I will not be able to carry a pack that's more than 20 pounds. And it will be stupid for me to attempt such a thing with all the injuries that I've incurred during my EMS profession. So it will be stupid for me to carry a pack that's going to weigh more than I could carry. And it will be difficult to have all the stuff that I want on me in a really, really bad survival scenario. Of course, you have to realize that each item that you put in your pockets or inside your pack will weigh something. And something as light as, let's say, a lumen top tool or a Victorinox waiter or even a toothbrush or pencil or even this big lighter will eventually add to the total weight of whatever you're carrying and weigh you down at the end of the day. So, when you're over 50, there's a lot of stuff to consider. I've personally been considering a lot of things. As a matter of fact, my survival kit has been modified so many times over the last decade simply because I'm considering my own physical ability to move around, my agility, my mobility, etc., and the stuff that I need to get done. So, this is just a small tip for not necessarily for guys like me who are practically over the half century mark, but also for those who are getting into the survival and readiness lifestyle for the first time. And I hope this helps you out in terms of what you really need to know as a survivalist, as a readiness practitioner, what you really need to know. It's not about the two is one. It's not really about redundancies. It's having just the right amount of stuff or just the right equipment for the tasks that you need to accomplish. And that's the simple concept of survival as far as I'm concerned. So that's been the long and the short of it. This has been Absabando from Manila Sentinel. Raw, one is one.
Airbus 5100, maintain and heading, climb 3,000 feet, runway 13, clear for immediate takeoff.